Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Free Roam Gaming Podcast. Normally, we're hosted by both me, Luke Stevens, and by the one and only Joel Raptor. However, this week, Mr. Joel Raptor is off on holiday. I don't know why I did quotation mark. He's on vacation. He's on a holiday in, I believe, Spain is where he's at. So he's having a nice, relaxing day. And so I'm here holding down the fort with some gaming news, a couple of interesting little tidbits that we're going to discuss, and it's going to be a good time. Thank you, everybody who's joining us live. As always, we also syndicate to pretty much every single podcast hosting service that you can think of. even a lot you've probably never heard of. So if you like to listen to podcasts on the go, you can always download us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever your preferred platform is. That being said, thank you everybody for joining us. We've got Hattie, 53 Nights, Deontay, Casper, Hebimaru, Proto, the one and only, Nebnos, Ethan, tons of people in chat with us live. That's always tremendous to see. I'm very glad to have you guys here. Was it Italy or Spain? I don't know. Either way, he's somewhere having a wonderful time relaxing, and he deserves it because that man works like an absolute madman. So here we are. Fun thing, in the middle of this podcast, I will be publishing a review. I don't think I can say what the review is on until that time comes, but it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. But in about an hour, we'll publish that, and I can offer my thoughts on that game once that time has come. Okay? So, little teaser for you guys. And then you guys listening to this, like, a day later are like, oh, okay, dude, whatever. Like I've already seen the review. I don't care. So with all that said, we have a handful of little tidbits, of course, more information kind of seeping out about gaming's worst kept secret, Grand Theft Auto 6. We have information about a free weekend surrounding Assassin's Creed. We're going to talk about the implications for that and the sort of unique novel marketing approach that they're taking with that. I find it interesting, to say the least, but we'll talk about that. More kind of fallout from the overwhelming success of Baldur's Gate 3, the insane player base that we have found there, and then we have hints about a new Far Cry game, updates to Assassin's Creed Unity on Intel Arc graphics cards, all sorts of stuff to go through. Plenty to discuss. I am kind of ready. How are you guys doing in chat? Have you guys, I want to know, everybody's been talking about Baldur's Gate 3. Apparently, I mean, obviously a lot of people are playing it, including myself, Nikki, myself, and then Caleb. We all jumped on last night and tried starting a cooperative campaign, which actually was pretty freaking fun. The turn-based combat, it sort of shifts into sort of a hybrid system where sometimes you'll be working together and you'll all be completing your turns at the same time, sort of in real time, doing whatever. You don't have to wait for everybody to finish their turn before you can start. And then other times it'll have you do each person's turn independently, which is interesting. I'm not sure what the barrier is or what the restrictions are there. But all told, I mean, it works pretty well. We did have, I don't know, this is the tricky thing with games that have like really nuanced consequences, is we got, to avoid spoilers, basically we went to an area where you talk to people and you can talk to those people and you can get in an argument and start a fight that basically causes the entire complex to come down and attack you. Or you can just talk to them and kind of quell their fears and everything's okay. We walked up to those people, engaged them in dialogue, and then instantly we started fighting, and we had to kill pretty much everybody in the entire encampment, which was unfortunate because what happened is we killed all of those people. We finished that, then we went down and we dealt with some harpies that were down by the beach, and then we came back up, and in retaliation for us killing all of their friends, the leadership of that complex, which we hadn't killed yet, went and wiped out all of the innocent people in the complex, which was a bit of a bummer to come back up. And we're like, oh, we just saved a child. That's good. Let's take you to your parents. And then we see that everybody is very dead. It was unfortunate. But the reason I say it's tricky is because it's very possible that like Caleb or Nikki or myself accidentally picked up something we shouldn't have picked up, looted something we shouldn't have looted in that base, and as a result they became aggroed on us, realized that we had stolen something, and then that started the combat that kicked all of this off. Or it was a bug. I'm not sure. It's just, it was very odd that we basically kicked it off, show up at the place, and then all of a sudden everybody's fighting us. So is it a bug? Is it a feature? I don't know. I really don't know. But anyway, it's been joyous. It's refreshing to have a game that we can just obsess about and melt into. And it really is spanning the pop culture divide, which is refreshing. The last time I had a game where like all of my friends were playing it and Nikki was interested in it and everybody was into it was like Elden Ring. We get one of these games every year or two, so it's just refreshing to check it out. One thing, I see people mentioning that the combat might feel slow to start. Depends on your build. The game is very stacked early on towards melee builds. If you go a little bit later, it starts to favor magic and ranged a little bit more, but certainly early on it favors barbarians and those types of builds. So if you're just starting and you're not having a great time with the combat, I would encourage you to try maybe swapping over to a melee based character and see how that goes from there, or at least get them as your companions, because then at least you'll get to play with those. But anyway, let's shift into the first topic of discussion. So everybody knows Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming. I mean, it's like I said, it's the worst kept secret in all of gaming. It's no mystery. Of course, they're making another one. It's going to print money, I'm sure. However, it never ceases to amaze me at just how coy all of the executives over at Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Rockstar Games, how coy they are when it comes to GTA 6, because everybody knows it's coming and everybody knows it's there, but nobody wants to acknowledge it or verify it. And in fact, the only reason it's been confirmed even that this is in production is because of those huge leaks that we had last year. I think it was last summer, where somebody hacked in, got tons and tons of footage, and it was basically, I mean, they couldn't deny it anymore. It was like, yeah, no, this is pretty clearly a Grand Theft Auto game in development. There was something insane, like what was it? I think it was 90 to 100 clips, individual clips of the game. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, and then the kid got like, I think he got away pretty much scot-free. I think he's on like, I'm sure he's on lists. I'm sure he's on parole or whatever. I don't know how it works in the UK, but yeah, he's he basically got away with it, which is insane. It was 90 videos, exactly about 3 gigabytes of dev footage. Yeah, and hypothetically, if somebody were to get it, hypothetically, somebody probably would have saved it so that they could reference it in the future, since no doubt instantaneously Rockstar came in and copyright struck everything. I remember when I did the video on that gameplay footage, anybody that showed screen grabs or screen caps or anything was getting their videos taken down. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I used like Midjourney to generate fake like Grand Theft Auto looking gameplay stills. And I used that for the thumbnail. And I was like, it's not the leak. Technically it's not. It's just Midjourney thinking what a leak might look like, so I got around it that way. But the leaks were pretty compelling. I mean, everybody jokes that a lot of these games that we're getting nowadays look and run worse than those leaks of Grand Theft Auto 5 from like a year ago. And apparently a lot of those leaks were from like, exactly pre-alpha builds years ago. So it's not even like current footage. And the other piece is people might look at that and be like, oh, it doesn't look very good. It's development footage. It's development footage. They don't need to add all the bells and whistles, all the God rays, all the super high res textures when they're just testing if systems work. So that's part of the reason why. Honestly, I don't know if you even could get that footage nowadays if you wanted to go watch it again. I'm sure it's somewhere on like 4chan or something. You can find links to it, or like maybe magnet links or something. But yeah, hypothetically, if somebody were to have watched it back in the day, they hypothetically probably should have saved it or could have saved it, in which case they could reference it now in real time, which is nice. But hypothetically, then of course somebody couldn't show it to you, unfortunately. But with all of that said, hypothetically, shifting forward, what we're referring to here today is that Strauss Zelnick, who is both built like a trapezoid and a pencil at the same time, he had a call with some investors. It's also known as just an earnings call, where they go through all of the earnings for the last quarter and describe how things have been going. And in that call, over the last like 2 to 3 quarters, it's been really funny because he's been very, very coy. They hint towards a big spike in revenue. We expect a significant increase in revenues in 2024, leading into 2025. We expect to have, some increased profits as well. We expect to dominate the headlines a little bit. And then somebody inevitably comes up and is like, "Sir, are you referring to Grand Theft Auto 6? Well, we're not going to talk about oncoming projects, but we are working on something that is going to improve our revenues." They just won't acknowledge it, even though everybody knows what they're talking about. What he said in this particular hearing or call was, quote, "We," being Take-Two, "remain confident that we are positioning our business for a significant inflection point in fiscal 2025, which we believe will include a new record levels of operating performance. Take-Two's fiscal year 25 runs between April of 2024, so this coming April, and March of the following year." Now again, what does Take-Two have in terms of games we know they're working on that could provide a significant inflection point? It's Grand Theft Auto 5. Like, there's nothing else. Like, do they really think that's going to be like 2K, NBA, whatever? Like, you think that's going to be it? No. That's all factored into what they have now. The only huge project that they are thinking is going to provide that level of a boost is Grand Theft Auto 5. They get into specifics. Whilst to some, the news might just be buzzwords for investors, Take-Two is expected to take in or is expecting a total of $8 billion in net bookings next year. This means versus the current fiscal year prediction of $5.5 billion. Take-Two is expecting an additional $2.5 billion next year. And again, like, for a video game to make $1 billion alone is an insane success. That is a very, very successful game. And so for them to have something to come along that they expect to make 2.5, it's Grand Theft Auto 5 or 6. There's no doubt. Like, it's Grand Theft Auto 6. If the publisher's prediction is because of the long anticipated GTA 6, not only could a reveal date be imminent, but we could expect GTA 6 to release somewhere around September to October of 2024. Judging by past reveals and the release of Rockstar Games, the developer behind GTA 6, and releases of GTA, Rockstar Games, it's likely that the announcement of GTA 6 will be made around October of this year, which we can then expect the game to launch around 12 months later. It should also be noted that Rockstar Games and Take-Two Interactive have a tendency to delay their games too. In 2021, I reported via sources on my YouTube channel, this is coming from, of course, Tom Henderson, who runs Insider Gaming, that GTA 6 was scheduled to release in 2024 to 2025, and in 2022, of course, the leak pretty much confirmed all of that stuff. So if the past strategy is going to be held to here as well, Rockstar typically announces their games about a year before they're set to launch, and then they market it steadily and slowly. They dominate headlines whenever they drop any information, but they give people plenty of time to pre-order and get set and for them to prepare marketing campaigns. And then they release the game, barring any extra delays that they might have to pursue, which makes sense. I mean, with a lot of these games, people are always like, why don't they just shadow drop more games? The reason is because like, if you want to avoid leaks, especially, you have to minimize the number of people that are getting their hands on information that could be leaked. So for like Fallout 4, I remember they did a relatively quick turnaround from announcement to when they dropped it, or Fallout 76, they certainly did as well, because Bethesda just likes to do that kind of thing. They had to do a lot of marketing stuff, working with marketing agencies, planning ads, shooting ads, all of this stuff, in the time period where it was still top secret, where they couldn't discuss it or disclose it, and that led to a lot of leaks. And frankly, Rockstar is just not going to do that. Like, they're just not going to risk it. So they'll announce it a full year ahead of time, and then they'll start to do advertising stuff where they'll give marketing agencies access to the footage that they need, blah, blah, blah. So we shall see. Now, the big piece with this, you know, the general perception, and I've also had this because it's freaking Rockstar, is like what the Diatu, I think maybe in chat is saying GTA 6 doesn't need any marketing LMAO. I think you're right. Whenever this comes out, everybody's going to talk about it. Baldur's Gate 3 has seen immense success largely because of word of mouth. And that will drive sales, no doubt. But I can't help but feel, especially after this Red Dead Redemption thing a couple days ago, I can't help but feel as though maybe, just maybe, this could be a little different. Like, Grand Theft Auto 6 obviously is set to be probably the biggest game of all time. However, Take-Two Interactive is a much different company than it has been for like over the last 10 years, you know? When Grand Theft Auto 5 launched, I know this might be baffling nowadays thinking of it, but Grand Theft Auto 5 was supposed to have a single player DLC. They were supposed to like expand the single player content, and the online mode was just supposed to be like a fun online thing for people to engage with. They didn't expect it to basically turn itself into a massive money-making cash printing machine. So Take-Two is a very different company than when Rockstar released Grand Theft Auto 5. And over the last 10 years, they have steadily made weird decisions. Like, of course, they released Red Dead 2, which was very, very well received and is one of my favorite games of all time. But they also butchered the ever-living hell out of Red Dead Online. And then they do this other stuff with, like, you know, of course, Red Dead Redemption 1 being re-released on the PS4 and the Switch. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm sure Grand Theft Auto 6 is still going to dominate all the headlines. It's still going to sell very, very well. But I would be braced for some really scummy tactics when it comes to monetization. I'm just braced for it because Take-Two is one of the most toxic companies when it comes to pricing. And I think we just have to be prepared for that. Like, even if, this is the thing though, at this point, the hype for just anything Rockstar does is so high because frankly, they've earned it because they just never miss. Even if GTA 5 launches and it's just not, somehow it's just not a very good game, it's still going to sell like crazy. It just is. So I don't even think there's much they could do to screw it up. Like, I've tried to think, I was like, what could they possibly do to get people not to buy GTA 6? I'm honestly not sure. Like, how bad would they have to screw up to get people to not buy it? Rocky says racial slurs in the game. I mean, unfortunately, even then, I think that would just lead to more marketing, more free press of people in the media freaking out about it, and people would still probably play it. Like, if they have somebody that comes in and, you know, they just have like a character who's straight up in the KKK and that's like your love interest for the game, that would be bad. Yeah. I'm not even sure that that would stop people from buying it to play the online. Like, I think people would still buy it. If it's like Saints Row and they go full woke cringe, maybe, I mean, I could see that if it's like, especially if that first trailer is really, really cringe with Saints Row level writing, I could see that. But I would consider that to be such a low possibility that anything like that happens. It would be really, really funny though to have like a very PC GTA game, because I don't think that would do well. I think a lot of people expect GTA to not be PC like that. So we'll see. But I mean, if any company can get away with not being PC, it's Rockstar, because they do whatever they want. So I'm still very confident that they're going to do great work. I think the online version of Grand Theft Auto 6 is probably going to be toxic as hell, just like the current one is. I don't know if you guys have tried to go back and play some freaking GTA online. Holy God, it's bad. Like, so many hackers, so many people trying to dox you. You basically can't play in public lobbies. You have to play private lobbies, and even then it's like kind of broken. Like, even then somehow people manage to hack their way in. It's just terrible. So my big question mark with GTA 6 Online is what that anti-cheat is going to look like, and I've seen pretty much nobody discuss that, which is bizarre to me. Like, there were all of those stories. I wonder if I can find one real quick. Wasn't there there was a story, I think last fall, maybe, where GTA Online hackers were able to go in and steal both money and corrupt your entire account just to troll you. Like, people were just doing this. If you played in public lobbies, people were just basically bricking your account. So you just could not play the game. You lose all of your progress, and that's it. Like, it's insane. Yeah, does this mean that it's fixed now? In terms of remote exploits, it should be safe now. In terms of regular cheating, nope, you will still face them in public lobbies, but at least no cheater should annoy you in invite-only lobbies. The fact that they could get into invite-only lobbies is amazing to me. But what are you going to do? So I think that that's kind of the biggest question mark right now with GTA 6 is how they're going to approach freaking hackers and exploits and stuff. Because if you think it's bad now, just wait until every streamer on the planet is playing GTA 6 online. Like, it's going to be everywhere nonstop. It's going to be a nightmare. One of the ways that they might get around it, and this has been a big question mark for a while, is by just not releasing a PC version for like a year or two. I know that sucks because I would like to play on PC, but I also understand it's a lot easier for them to manage avoiding hackers if they just don't release it on PC, which is what they technically did with Grand Theft Auto, what they did for Red Dead as well. If we look at GTA 5's history, when they released that, how they did it was they did the PS3 and 360 on September 17th of 2013. It released on next-gen consoles, so the PS4 and Xbox One, almost a little over a year later in November of 2014. And then they released on Windows in April of 2015. So like a year and a half after the initial launch. So if you think that like they're just going to drop day one the game at on PC, I'm just not convinced that that's going to happen. It just doesn't seem to be the case. And if we look at Red Dead Redemption 2, it was something very, very similar, where they released on PS4 and Xbox One in October of 2018. Windows, it came, again, just about a year and a few weeks later in 2019. And then it came to Stadia just a week and a half later. So I would personally expect no PC port at launch, especially with the online stuff, which is just a little bit of a bummer. But what are you going to do? Switch release when? In 15 years? Once the console's like completely out of date? For sure. Yeah, Jesus. Okay, so all of this to say, I'm sure GTA 6 is going to be a solid game. It would be the story of the century if it's not very, very good. But the online mode, I have no doubt, is going to be a bit of a disaster for a while, and they might not ever fix it. It's going to be super toxic. They're probably going to have tons of roleplay stuff built in to try and capitalize on that, which will be cool. But that online mode, they don't currently have any sort of significant anti-cheat system in place. And as far as we know, they aren't working on anything. So what makes you think that magically they're going to figure it out for GTA 6 Online? I just don't think they will. So I'm braced for it to be an absolute dumpster fire online when it launches, but we shall see. The core game, I'm sure, is going to be very good, though, and I'm excited to see it. The only thing they have to avoid is being super cringe, and they will be okay. Because as we've seen this year, which is really funny, you can have a game that's buggy and broken and just doesn't look well or run well, as we saw with Jedi Survivor. It just did not perform well. I know some people said, oh, but I didn't have problems with it. Awesome. Congratulations. The vast majority of people did have problems. Even on console, it did not run very well at all. The fidelity and performance modes were basically the same thing. Like it didn't change it. So for one, that's not, I don't think that is a significant enough death knell for a game to harm its success. You can have a buggy, broken mess that still sells very, very well. But what you apparently cannot recover from in the modern gaming age is cringe. Forspoken, a pretty beautiful game, pretty solid combat system, but it was cringy, so it did terribly. Same with Saints Row. Graphically, not terrible. It was also pretty buggy at launch, and the gameplay was simplistic, but you could have pitched that as just a throwback to like the 360 generation. But it was cringy, and you can't save that. So, the game could be any number of things. It could also launch buggy, which it probably won't be because Rockstar never releases anything buggy. But if it's cringe, they won't be able to save that. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But with that said, let's shift gears a little bit and shift forward into this next thing, which I found very, very interesting. Basically, Ubisoft has started a play free event for Assassin's Creed from August 10th through the 14th, where they're giving you access to 5 different Assassin's Creed games for free to play. And then they're also putting a bunch of games in the series up to 85% off to try and get you to buy up some of those. It's a unique strategy. Just let people play for like a few days. Not like the worst thing for gamers. I think it's cool that they're giving access to these or players to access to these games, but just an interesting marketing campaign. I'm wondering if this is just really all about getting people to re-download the Ubisoft launcher and to get them to sign up with their current email address and everything, so that then they can start really pushing Assassin's Creed Mirage when that comes out. Because otherwise I can't think of why you would just put the game out for free. Like an 85% off weekend, that alone is a pretty good deal, or 75% off. I stand corrected. But still, like, it's just surprising to me, because a lot of these games you can finish in like 3-4 days pretty easily. Like, you could finish Assassin's Creed 2 over the course of this free-to-play weekend. You won't be able to finish sorry, I almost said Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That's so wrong of me. It's actually
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
But to me, it just seems like they're trying to get people to re-download some Assassin's Creed, get familiarized with the franchise again after a little bit, also re-down the launcher and put your current email address in so that they can start sending you marketing emails and stuff. And then they're going to start a marketing push for Mirage, which is, I mean, it makes sense, but this is a very interesting marketing campaign. So if you have been sitting on trying Assassin's Creed, or if you've wanted to try Black Flag, Valhalla, Brotherhood Revelations, or 2, you can do that now for free over the course of the 10th through the 14th. So tomorrow for a few days, which is pretty cool. And then as for which games are actually on sale, the link is broken. So I guess we're not looking at that. You gotta love Ubisoft, man. Come on, guys. It's just a broken link. Well, guys, should probably fix that. should probably fix that. Oh, man. That's interesting. Yeah, and get you to buy or sign up for Ubisoft Plus, which is the other thing that they want you to sign up for. I'm still honestly amazed that they still do Ubisoft Plus, just because it doesn't make a lot of sense monetarily, but yeah, what are you going to do? So there's that, if you want to play those games. Now, let me close down all of these tabs that were broken because the link's broken. So beyond that, if we shift forward into another game that we've been having a jolly old time with, Baldur's Gate 3. I want to know how many of you, we're actually going to do a poll. How many of you guys are playing Baldur's Gate 3? Are you playing BG3? Yes, no. Let's see how many of you guys in chat right now are actively playing Baldur's Gate 3. Not like at this minute, but are you playing it like at this point in time? Like, are you playing it now at launch? Not necessarily during the stream, but here. Michelle Ross literally playing right now. That's awesome. I mean, it looks like probably 20-ish, like 25% of you guys are playing, but 75 are not. That's crazy. Symbolic Legacy, I'm 85 hours in at the moment. Ooh, baby, that's awesome. Waiting for a sale, that's fair. The poll isn't popping for mobile. Oh, really? Oh, that's crazy. Oops. Only play for about 4 hours, but we'll do more eventually. Ooh. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Rather stick to Persona 5. I can understand that. That's another huge game. But with all of this, what I will say is I encourage you to try it. I understand it's not necessarily up a lot of people's alley because it's isometric and then it's also turn-based. It's also narrative, so it's a slower moving game. But if you like narrative RPGs, it's going to blow you away. It really will. But if you also need to wait for a sale, no shame there. Whether you're playing it or not, though, I'm sure you've heard it, how crazy successful it has been, blowing past everybody's expectations, which is frankly awesome. Like, whether you like the game or not, even if you've played it and you hate the game, it still is a good thing that an independent studio is dropping a game that is, whether you love it or not, it is a pro-consumer title. There's no big DLC tied to it. There's no microtransactions. There's no like day one DLC available that they're dropping at the same time. It's just a full, complete, solid game that is very well thought out, that isn't trying to appeal to everybody, isn't trying to do Grand Theft Auto mixed with The Witcher 3, mixed with Assassin's Creed. It's just coming out and doing what they do and does it very, 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 very well. And it's funny now, after all of the success, to see like Larian's boss describe their perception of the game just a few months ago. But Larian's boss worried that Baldur's Gate 3 had actually peaked in early access. So the massive 800,000 concurrent player base on Steam was way, way beyond their expectations. We also talked about this on stream the other day. He apparently had told their IT department to only prepare for around 100,000 concurrent players. He was like, honestly, I think that would be really successful. I wouldn't expect more than like 100,000 concurrent. And they've done 800,000. That's wild. That's wild. And now it is among Steam's all-time most played games, which is a huge achievement. I mean, it's right up there right now with Hogwarts Legacy, which was a huge launch in and of itself. So that's just crazy. That's wild. Vink said that he held his heart during the launch, hoping that millions of players didn't run into progress blocking bugs of some kind. I don't want to have that anger over me, but it's part of the risk making these very large RPGs, for real. On Friday, approximately 24 hours after Baldur's Gate 3 launched on PC, BG3 had already passed 500,000 concurrent players at the time, and Vink tweeted that he had informed IT managers, managing Larian's account login servers to expect something like 100,000 players max. Their last game, Divinity Original Sin 2, had peaked over at just over 90,000 concurrent players. It's just crazy. It's wildly successful. And the reason you should be rooting for this, and Asmongold also did a video and talked about this on stream, even if it's not your kind of game, even if you're not going to be playing it a lot, you should still try to support this kind of thing. You should still try to support these types of games. You guys remember all of the discussions from from developers, from like Insomniac, and I think there was one from Ubisoft and then another from, I don't recall who the other one was from, but there's been a lot of developers that came out and said, don't expect games like Baldur's Gate 3 to come all the time. This is very exceptional. You shouldn't raise the bar up to Baldur's Gate 3 levels. This is just a very exceptional game, and you shouldn't expect this from other big budget studios. Which sat really weird with a lot of people. Everybody's like, well, dude, if the bar has been raised, you have to rise to it. I'm sorry that's difficult, but like you don't get to just be like, no. I don't want to do that. Like, no. It's like we've seen over like 15 years of YouTube content creators who, like, back in the day, I don't know if you guys were watching content around that time, but back in like 2008, there were Let's Players and there were what were like Call of Duty commentators. So like Wings of Redemption or DSP with fighting games, and those guys who now are considered lolcows. But the reason they're considered lolcows are there are plethora of reasons for that. But one of the things that set them apart was that they started recording their gameplay footage with just a camera set up on a coffee table looking at the TV. And then it would capture their voice as they talked about it, and that's how they captured their videos. And so they would just prop their phone up or their video camera, whatever, and hit record, play the game. It looked terrible, the sound was terrible, and it just was the best anybody could do at the time. But as time went on, the bar raised. People got capture cards, and then other creators like PewDiePie eventually came along that had separate, very high quality microphones that they had spent hundreds of dollars on, which was unthought of at the time, that you'd spend so much money on a microphone for a video on YouTube. Like, who would do that? But they got specialized microphones and audio, and then they had editors balance all of the audio, and they had direct capture, and then they overlay that with a green screen to cut out the background from you. And then eventually they started investing in a lot of premium graphics and nice studio spaces and all this, and it raised the bar, raised the bar, raised the bar. And all along, there were people that were like, I don't think I should have to change how I make stuff. I don't think I should have to swap from using a camcorder. It sounds like too much work to get a capture card. And you know what? Those people fell by the wayside. Those people are not cutting edge Let's Players anymore. Like, they just aren't, because they tried to keep back with the way things used to be done, which might have been convenient, might have been easier, but the bar needs to raise. And that's how we make progress as an industry. And so I think it's ridiculous for a lot of these companies to come out and so quickly try to play damage control and shut down the idea that games like this are possible. As we've seen, they are possible. It just requires a crap ton of work, a lot of custom work on the engine. I mean, it's not going to be easy, of course, but as we've seen with 800,000 concurrent players, players want this. Players want a high quality RPG that they can play. That's what they want. That isn't filled with all this extra crap. And we even saw it with Hogwarts Legacy, where they came out and they could have done all sorts of really cringy pay-to-win stuff, you know, as we would expect from Warner Brothers, loot boxes, all that. But they didn't. It was just a solid game that people got to play and enjoy. So the reason it's important to support it is because every time this type of game balloons up into amazing success, hopefully the big guys upstairs, like the Strauss Zelnicks, the CEOs that make the big budgetary decisions of what gets greenlit for $100 million investment, those guys maybe will take notice and realize, okay, we can spend a lot of money on developing something that isn't crammed with microtransactions and predatory pricing models, and that's okay. It's okay. The game can still do very, very well. And I think that this is a tremendous success and is wonderful, wonderful to see. Stefan, if the wave has been raised, you have to stay afloat. Yeah, if you don't want to think about it as a bar, think of, like, we just went to Waterworld, which is a big water park in Colorado, like a couple weeks ago, and they have a wave pool. And I don't know if you've ever been in a wave pool, but wave pools are just huge, rectangular, scary, monstrous machines of death. Like, they're horrifying. But these things can just generate, let me see if I can just turn this on. These things can just generate crazy high waves that are artificial, of course. And I'm trying to see, I don't know. Okay, I'm not gonna, I can't find a video. It's all these cringe, like, vacation videos. But wave pools, I mean, they'll generate waves that are like 10, 15 feet tall, and you have to kind of float with them. Otherwise, you'll drown. Pretty straightforward, right? If you want to think about this as raising the wave, raising the water level, that's a good analogy, Stefan. Because if you don't float with it, if you don't raise with it, you're going to drown. Okay? You got to figure it out. Otherwise, you just won't compete. At the very least, if you can't swim with and keep up with those waves, get out of the damn pool. And that's what people are saying with these RPGs. They're like, yeah, no, the bar's been raised with Baldur's Gate 3. If you can't raise to this level, don't try to make an RPG, because you're going to look terrible in comparison, because now this is a peer. This is who you're competing with, whether you like it or not. And that's one of my frustrations with every game trying to be an RPG now. It's one of my frustrations and things I've kind of debated with Joraptor on, because Joraptor loves Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West. And I think those games are really good examples of jack of all trades, master of maybe a couple. They're graphically very impressive. I think the combat can be very impressive at times, but everything else they try to do with the writing, with the narrative, with side quests, with the RPG mechanics that are barely mechanics, all of that stuff is an afterthought. And it just makes me wonder why it's even there in the game at all. So I just think hopefully this will make it so when people try to make RPGs, they look at Larian as the inspiration. They look at Baldur's Gate 3 as what they need to achieve. And they stop trying to just turn everything into an RPG. But yeah, anyway. Stefan, thank you for the super chat. I think the key element in the development of Baldur's Gate 3 was the early access. This is what other big studios can learn from the success of the game. Early access, I think certainly helped it. The feedback from players certainly helped it. But early access is also a little risky because it really screws up the marketing timeline and rhythm of a game, because you have inevitably a ton of people who think that the game already released, because it sort of did in early access, but it's not fully released. But they already think maybe the game's already out, so it's not as exciting. And they've seen the game before. Like, it was kind of weird when I got the review copy of Baldur's Gate 3, because I'm like, okay, a game for review, let's sit down. I started playing it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember playing through this like 10, 15 hour, whatever section like 2 years ago. But it's a new game that I'm playing for release, like right now. It was just a little weird. So early access is certainly rolling a big die to see how things work out. I rolled a 3, so that's probably not good. So I just think it helped Larian, but it won't always help studios. So yeah, I know people come at me for my Horizon opinions. And I say this as somebody, I've got like the collector's edition for Forbidden West back there. I think they are very impressive games, but I think they are far from masterpieces, and maybe that's my gaming hot take. I think that they have a lot of things they don't do very well at all. It's funny to me to see everyone was so sick of smaller games, so they wanted bigger games. Now we have so many bigger games and everyone is sick of them and wants smaller games again. Yeah, Phoenix, it's really, really funny. The grass is always greener on the other side, right? One of the best indications, and I told this story on stream the other day, I was watching an old video where Boogie2988 was describing his time at the Game Awards when he won Trending Gamer. And he was approached by the, at the time, head of EA Games, and they were there very proudly to hopefully, and they eventually did, accept the Game of the Year award for Dragon Age Inquisition, which won Game of the Year that year. And he said that this guy that approached him was like, have you had the chance to play Dragon Age Inquisition? And he goes, no, I haven't actually had the chances. I've heard good things about it though. And he's like, yes, well, we have over 100 hours of main story content. And if you want secondary content like side quests, we have over 100 hours of that in our game as well. And like, that's the selling point. It was a massive game that was available to you for the same price as these other games that are cheaper. And so we went into this period where for the next few years, everybody was like, okay, so you just want really big games, good bang for the buck, right? Good value for your money. But I think people started to get frustrated that a lot of these studios built massive games that were very difficult to finish, and people frankly wanted to be able to play more than one game in a 2-month period, which I mean, if you didn't play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you might not know how much of a grind or a trudge something like that is. Playing that game and trying just to get to the credits takes like 80 hours. It's insane. It's an actual trudge. And it doesn't feel like it should be. It doesn't feel like it earns it. Red Dead Redemption 2 is perhaps another example of a game that's very long and a huge game, but it feels like it earns its length. It doesn't, like, at least to me, it never felt as though it was stretching out the game. It didn't feel like they were trying to make the game last longer. It just felt like they had a story to tell, and that story happened to take 60 to 80 hours to tell. And that, to me, I thought was great. But so often it seems like these writers and studio execs are like, no, you need to get this to the 50-hour mark or to the 100-hour mark, so just fill some bloat in there. That was one of my frustrations with AC Odyssey, is it felt like in the last quarter to last third of the game, they reach that point where they're like, okay, we need to stretch this out. So if they're not using XP boosters, they're going to have to do 30 hours of side content to grind up. And so they set that up, and sure enough, you had to grind for like 30 hours to get to the end credits, which honestly were not super satisfying. But it's just interesting because you're right. The pendulum swings every probably 5 to 10 years where people go from wanting X and then they get X so much that they're sick of it and they want Y. And then eventually it swaps over, they get Y, and then they're sick of Y and they want X. And it's just going to always swing back and forth. So I think in 5 years, we'll also be starting to feel like I just want longer games. So just buckle up. It's going to happen. It's gonna happen. We're not sick of big games. We're sick of bloated games trying to be big. Yeah, perhaps, Yumi, that is the nuance that this requires. It's games that shouldn't be big that are trying to be big. Yes, exactly. It's a bunch of phonies is what it is. It's a bunch of phonies. Speaking of phonies, let's talk about Ubisoft again. So Ubisoft has hinted, no shock, at a new Far Cry game. That's the story, folks. That's the whole that's the whole story. Nearly 2 years after Far Cry 6 released, which is crazy. It's been that long. Time really is flying by. I'm getting so old so quickly. Death's coming, boys. Cheers. Ubisoft seemingly confirms that another installment in the long-running series is in the works. Ubisoft Toronto is working on a new Far Cry game, as indicated by job listings suggesting the series is not finished yet. No shocker. Of course, they're working on another one. The upcoming game is likely in its early stages of development, as many of the advertised roles are in department leads and directors. It may be a while before the new Far Cry game is officially revealed, considering that the lengthy development cycles of previous entries in the series and the studio's other ongoing projects. It seems like a lot of the people that previously worked on like Far Cry 6 went and started helping with Assassin's Creed, and now they're shifting and they're going to start having them work on this new Far Cry game. But one of the interesting things is that they're bringing in a lot of new talent specifically for Far Cry 7, which is interesting. It's interesting to me. So we'll see what it looks like. I think some fresh perspectives could be very, very good. I think a lot of people have felt for a long time that Far Cry is a more bland, generic first-person shooter in the industry. But frankly, we don't get a whole lot of narrative first-person games anymore. Certainly narrative first-person, like open-world adventure games like that. For whatever reason, all of those studios shifted. You know, you're not getting Killzone anymore. You're not getting Splinter Cell. You're not like, but that was third person. But anyway, like you're not getting a lot of these games anymore. And they are one of the few still doing it. So we shall see. We shall see. It's unfortunate though, because this genre is very successful. It's why they keep making Far Cry games, because they sell millions of copies. But every studio that could make one of these games has decided to shift instead and do like extraction shooters, or to shift and try to make a multiplayer game or like a battle royale. Like, also, what is it about extraction shooters? They're everywhere. Like, why is that the big thing? Are there any like huge extraction shooters that would be pushing people to do that? I don't know. Like, I guess you could say like Rainbow Six really surprised and excited a lot of people. That's more hardcore though. There's that Rainbow Six Extraction, Tarkov. There's the Call of Duty one that they did. So there's stuff like this, and I guess technically those have millions of players, even though a lot of us are not interested in it. But it seems like every big studio is trying to do an extraction shooter. You know, it's just kind of frustrating because 95% of them are going to die within 6 months. That's really the biggest bummer, is like they spend 5 years working on one of these and then they die out as quickly as they arrive, which is just so frustrating. Far Cry 6 Cardinal Sin for me was a constant wave of enemies, and there's no such thing as clearing the area, and it felt like a pointless struggle. Yeah, that's another example of a game that I think probably leans into the shouldn't be a super long game, but was trying to be a super long game, in my humble opinion. Hunt Showdown. Yeah, Hunt Showdown did get a resurgence. Hunt Showdown did get a resurgence of players, which was kind of cool to see. And I'm correct me if I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure Hunt Showdown. It's not the same studio that made Rise Son of Rome. It's been a while since I made that Rise Son of Rome video, but I'm pretty sure they're the same guys that did that, which is kind of awesome. That's kind of awesome that they found something else to do. I wish that they were still doing something like Rise Son of Rome, but it also goes to show you that a lot of these companies that previously did like pretty impressive single player games, they're now doing multiplayer games because there's just frankly more money in it. That's what they get approval for, and so they just shift forward to that. Also, to everybody watching live, check it out. Lachlan James, my oldest, is at Sam's Club with his mom, and she got him a slice of pizza, and he's having a wonderful time. So he's living his best life right now, and I'm not jealous at all. Oh, pizza does sound good right now. I've been so good, guys. By the way, this is a slight diatribe before we get into the last couple stories. I've been so good. I've gotten up. I've been running. I've been having oatmeal for breakfast, and I've been like eating Caesar salads with chicken every day for lunch. I get one treat per day, which are these Red Bulls. I get one Red Bull in the little can, and I track all the calories and stuff. I've been a very good boy, but god damn it, that pizza looks really good. Looks really, really good. Yeah, still having that daily Red Bull. Yeah, well, what I did back in the day when I was doing a musical called The Full Monty. This this might be like a little TMI, but the Full Monty is a musical based on a movie where basically a bunch of iron workers decide to make a Chippendales troupe and strip in front of the town to raise some money and blah, blah, blah. It's a really funny musical where you strip on stage. For that, I was going to lose some weight because we strip on stage. So I went and like started doing a pretty intense diet. Of course, we were working out constantly. We had the rehearsals, dance rehearsals, all of that stuff. And for that, like, I basically lived on Caesar salads and chicken. And the only way I could get through the day eating like rice, chicken, Caesar salads, chicken, like nothing but, was at the end of the day at like 10 p.m. I got to go to McDonald's and have a Sprite. A McDonald's Sprite. You know, the kind that just burns your throat. It feels like you're drinking battery acid in the best way. Those Sprites made it all worth it. That was my one treat, is that I could get all through the day eating stuff that was just kind of boring and bland, work your butt off, but at the end of the day, you get to have a big Sprite. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. And that was wonderful. That was wonderful, man. Oh, so good. Drizzy. Hey, buddy, haven't made it. This is funny. This is a reference to something we watched on stream the other day. I haven't made an emotional connection with another human in years, but your videos also, your videos did that also. I love No Man's Sky. Oh man, that's so good to hear. Yeah, that video, if you've not seen that, we just posted the highlight reel earlier today. Seriously, after this stream, go watch Luke Revisits No Man's Sky's insane hype train. We watch a video of a guy from back in like 2015 talking about No Man's Sky and just totally losing it. Like, this person is very unstable and is like tearing up and getting shaky in his voice talking about a game that hasn't released yet. And one of the first things he says is that he has been in games journalism for 2 years at that point, and watching Sean Murray describe No Man's Sky, a game which hadn't released yet, he said that it was the first time he had felt a human connection. Which is like, you're pretty far down the rabbit hole. If you're like, oh yeah, the first time I felt a human connection was when I was watching this video game announced at E3. It was like, we were watching it. It's like, okay, dude, I don't know how to help you. Like, this is like, that's pretty bad. Like, do you need a hug? And everybody else in the room was kind of like, what? Like, are you good, dude? You good, fam? Oh man, but it was just so funny. It was just so funny. But what are you gonna do? So Yeah, I encourage you to go watch that video because it's a clip from our stream and it's just, man, it's a wild ride. I think we'll turn it into a dedicated main channel video where we discuss why avoiding hype is important, why being skeptical is important, because it's just a guy that has bit hook, line, and sinker into this crazy level of hype around No Man's Sky. And now we know how that story ends. But the reason it's important is because when you get to that level of hype and it's not what you're hoping it is, you will be destroyed and devastated. That guy left games journalism. Like, he retired after all of that. So it's just, you got to be cautious. So I encourage you to go watch it. Yeah, talk to a dude about with 5 minutes about a game he hasn't played yet, and the dude went through a spiritual journey. Yeah, and one of the things that like was really shocking was that like you could see his hands are like shaking. His body sent the chemicals, like the adrenaline and stuff, for fight or flight once somebody came in and started challenging his opinion on No Man's Sky, a game which hadn't released yet. And frankly, had a lot of confusing and conflicting information out about it. So like his opinion had been challenged and his brain cared so much about this thing that he had never touched that it sent fight or flight. Like what happens when your child is being threatened by a bear. That's the chemical reaction that went through him in that moment. It was just not okay. Like, if you feel that way about anything that's not like your child or somebody you care about, you need to reflect because something's gone wrong. Something's gone wrong. I wonder if there's any way to see his reaction to the final game. Like, who was he? I wonder if he has a review up later in that stream. I'm not sure if Jacob put it into the stream clip, but later in that stream, we do go and we found the review. Maybe it was the next day, but we found the review that he wrote. He had somebody else read it and do the video for it. But he does say that it's not as good as they were hoping, and he still kind of puffs it up a little bit, but like you can tell that he was pretty devastated. I think that made it that did make its way into the clip. Okay, that's awesome. Oh, did we look at that at the members only stream yesterday? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you're right, Irux. You're right. So by the way, if you guys want to become members, before we shift into this last part of the discussion, we had like a 2.5 hour members only stream yesterday. It's just a stream where all we do is talk about whatever. Like, it's very, very relaxed, very chill. And yesterday we had a members only stream for like 2.5 hours. Only members were allowed in, and it was frankly pretty cool. It was a very, very good time. So if you've ever considered supporting the channel, the streams, any of that stuff, if you become a member, not only do you get early access to the big critiques when we do those, but also you'll get badges, you get extra emotes, and you get access to those members only streams, which is pretty cool. So let's just shift forward. Into our kind of final topic. Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Becoming a member. Appreciate you, Michelle. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I have a review. I'm going to hit publish on it real quick just before we get into this. Otherwise, I will forget. So, let me just do that. Add it to the playlist. Save. Voila. So, I was sent a review code for this game. Videos. Which you've probably seen marketing for everywhere because, frankly, it has been everywhere. Atlas Fallen. This is a game that is coming from Focus Entertainment. It's coming from, I believe it's Deck 13 is the name of the studio. Am I just making that up? I don't see. Yes, Deck 13 Interactive. So it's coming from a smaller studio, but it looks very graphically impressive. It's a very interesting game. Now, when I first saw the trailer, I thought it was going to be sort of like a Monster Hunter game. You'll see that they come out and they show like some big monstrous boss fights and stuff, big open expansive areas. Seems compelling, right? Seems really, really compelling. Well, I played the game Shout out to Focus Entertainment. They sent me the game a week early, which is wild. That is extremely rare nowadays. So shout out to them for that. But once you actually get the game, you'll be surprised that it actually plays very similarly, to, ironically enough, to Forspoken, which is crazy. But here's the thing. It's Forspoken without the cringy narrative, without the cringy protagonist. This protagonist is just kind of flat. And you have a gauntlet on your arm that has somebody kind of possessed inside of it. And they talk to you, but they also aren't trying to be funny or witty. They just are there to occasionally talk to you about the main story. And that's it. But it plays shockingly similar to Forspoken, but in a much better way. Like, weirdly enough, this is what Forspoken wanted to be, but on a AA scale. And I think it works pretty well, honestly. It's a decent enough game. It's available for $50. And at $50, this is something where you need to evaluate it for yourself. Most people, I'm guessing, we can check. Let me, reviews. Okay, yeah, so most people are putting it at about a 7 out of 10. It looks like 3 out of 5, 7 out of 10s, right around there. And I would say that's probably fair. It's good. It's not great. The way I describe it in my review that I just hit publish on is that it is aight. It's fine. It's not like really good. It's not bad. It's just kind of there. It'll offer you about 10 to 12 hours of pretty decent gameplay. The combat, frankly, is as simple or as hard as you want it to be. It's just up to you. You can do whatever you want with it. Let me see if I can just show you some footage now. And so there's some really compelling sequences, honestly, and some of the boss fights are crazy. If you want to play on easy, the game is basically a button masher, but if you play on normal or hard, it can get pretty freaking tricky. And if we go through here, I wonder... is there a bit where, yeah, so like this is a customization screen where you're going to customize your gauntlet using essence stones, and each of these are split into tiers. You got bronze, silver, and gold. In order to use these, you have to level up your essence meter, which I'll show you in a second. But the red are based around damage. The purple are considered like trickster abilities. So those are going to be things that like deflect damage when you parry something, or like the blue ones are going to be based around defense and things, or the green ones too. And so you can really customize your character depending on how you like to play. If you want to play really high risk, high reward, high damage, but low damage, but low defense, you can do that. I set an alarm to tell me to publish the video. So you can customize your character however you want. And honestly, it works pretty good. I'm actually pretty pleased with it. And it fulfills the purpose of a combat system. Like, it lets you really experiment and have a good time with it. And then there's different armor sets that can be tweaked, of course, with all sorts of stuff. This gets into more nuance, which I talk about in the review, but there is actually a lot here. This is called Atlas Fallen. It's Atlas Fallen. Oh, Nacho, thank you.
Nacho Muriel super chatted $5.87. Hey Luke, just discovered your channel like a month and am amazed with the content. I was wondering if you ever played Greedfall for it's amazing. Greetings from Mexico, laughing face.
Yeah, great. Glad to have you, my friend, and thank you for the super chat. That's very generous. Appreciate you. And yes, I did actually play Greedfall. That was another Focus Entertainment from this same publisher. That was another game from these guys, and it was another like really solid, probably 8 out of 10, 7.5 to 8 out of 10 game in the AA space that was unique and compelling. And I would encourage anybody looking to support smaller studios that likes those types of kind of open world adventure RPGs, sort of classic Dragon Age style games, to go and check it out. I'd encourage you to go check it out. But I mean, you can see the combat, the gameplay all looks pretty interesting and compelling, and frankly, it feels pretty good to play. It also runs. I think I accidentally forgot to mention this in the review. It does run really well on Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. So if you have one of those consoles and you want to play handheld, it works pretty well at like 45 to 60 frames, which is pretty cool. This down here is the essence meter. So this little blue meter increases as you deal damage and kill enemies, and it'll decrease when you die. There's some abilities you can get to tweak that, where it will like, oh, now you don't lose essence when you die, but that's a very expensive ability you have to equip. So they balance it that way. But this is really interesting because it leads to this really high risk, high reward type of thing, where if you build this meter, you'll deal out more damage, but you'll also take in more damage. So you have to be very, very good about parries and dodges and stuff like that. And you see as this meter fills up, these are getting colored in, these little squares. Those are those same squares that you enabled on that Essence Stone screen. So as this fills, you'll unlock these passive abilities so that you get the effect that they offer. And then you'll also see over here are those diamonds that you selected. Those get unlocked to be used once you pass that threshold with this meter. So the really powerful gold ability you'll only get once you filled the meter past this point. But you have to be careful because when you use the meter, it's going to drop, and then you might lose access to these passive abilities, which are really helpful. So there's just a constant kind of push and tug and stuff going on with it that I actually really, really like. The only real problem I have with the game, if I'm being honest, is that the world feels pretty dead. Again, very, very similar to Forspoken, honestly. And I think the game starts really, really slow. Like the first hour is a bit of a trudge. Honestly, the first hour and a half is a bit of a trudge. And beyond that, it's pretty good. Why won't this go full screen? What am I doing wrong? I don't know. So, but beyond that, it's like a really solid game for $50. Oh, did I actually hit the loop thing? Is that what I did? I totally did. There we go. I thought I was hitting full screen. I was hitting the loop button. Oops. Luke loves a little tug. You're damn right. You're damn right. Honestly, I didn't think this game was very good, but once I realized it was a little tug, I had a great time. I really did. I really did. But all this to say, I think the game is good enough that some people can justify it for $50. I think most people can probably justify it for like 30. But if this looks interesting to you, I would encourage you to go check it out. It's, again, technically a budget game. It's a AA studio. They're not charging full price for it. And it'll give you a solid 10 to 12 hours of decent combat. And honestly, probably 15 to 20 hours if you do a lot of side content. And I found it relatively interesting. So I'd encourage you to go check it out. A lot of games have similar aesthetics to this game. There's that FPS magic shooter Immortals. There's also this action game that was revealed last year called Flintlock, Forspoken 2. Yeah, I don't know what kind of kicked off all of these games at the same time that have these like gauntlet things. If somebody knows if there was like a movie or some other game that did that made everybody want to start doing it. It is weird that within like 18 months, we're getting 3 or 4 games that all use like a really weird sci-fi / fantasy gauntlet for magical abilities. It's just funny to me. Maybe it is just a coincidence, but it seems odd to me that they're all coming at the exact same time. Ben 10. Oh, dude, that's a throwback. That's a throwback. Thanos, maybe. I mean, I guess that would line up. It's the Infinity Gauntlet. Maybe I could see that. Can I slide without restriction and pull off tricks and ramps, completely ignoring combat though? I mean, you can do the sand surfing and I guess surf around that way, but it's not like there's a Skate 3 trick system or anything. Like the surfing is just a fancy sprint is really all it is. It just is a fancy sprint. Early in the game, they do a couple things with it where you go down like big hills, you get going pretty fast. After that, later in the game, they kind of forget about it and it's just not really there. Because again, this only works on sand and a lot of the later game areas are like over here, not in sand, so you can't even use it there. But I had a decent time with it. I mean, again, it's just one of those games that's good It's not going to win any Game of the Year awards, but for a AA studio, I thought it was pretty impressive. And I would love to see what they do with potentially a sequel. So I would also encourage people to go check it out, support it if it looks interesting. And again, it's from Focus Entertainment. They keep doing better and better. They really know how to select solid games. I gotta hand it to them. And up and coming studios especially. It's pretty impressive. Let's see. I wonder how these guys made such a similar game to Forspoken. Like, did the two studios have the same kind of idea around the same time of development? Yeah, actually, it is funny how sometimes that parallel thinking does kick in. I remember watching the Raising Kratos documentary, and Cory Barlog is describing how they saw a lot of the stuff that, like, Ninja Theory was doing with Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And they were freaking out that, like, do they have like a mole in our office or vice versa? Like, how are we doing the same thing? The no-cut camera, all of the crazy cinematic Nordic stuff, like some of the puzzles were very, very similar. They were doing all of this stuff that was very, very similar to each other, but it was just parallel thinking. And in the end, the games ended up being pretty different. But it's just funny. It's just funny. As for Forspoken, it's clearly better. What are you people smoking? So Hicksock, I think Forspoken is a much bigger budget version of this. In terms of core gameplay loop, world design, all of that stuff, I think, Forspoken has a lot to offer. The big thing with Forspoken is that, for one, it still doesn't run super well. It runs better than it did at launch, so that's good. But more than anything, and the biggest problem with Forspoken is the ungodly cringe that it throws at the player constantly. And I think that's because they wanted to have a protagonist that people loved and that could be like really appreciated and somebody that players could see as like a mascot, basically. And instead, they ended up with somebody that gamers cannot stand. They somehow wrote somebody they thought would be really likable, and they ended up with somebody that is painfully unlikable. And that's something we've also seen with like Saints Row, which is just baffling that those writers really thought gamers would find those characters in Saints Row entertaining or likable. But instead, like, they made people that nobody can stand to hang out with, much less play like a 30-hour game with. So it's just different. But the other piece of it too is that Forspoken is a $70 game. I'm sure now it's on sale pretty consistently, but that's a $70 game. This is coming in from a much smaller studio at $20 bucks less, which puts it into a different category. This puts it into the AA, even indie category, which is just a different realm of consideration. You know, the bar is way higher when you're charging $70 than it is necessarily when you're charging like 40, 50
Matt
bucks.
Sanders, Swami, super chatted $10. Love your videos.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend. Very generous. Thank you, Matt. And cheers. Cheers to that. Thank you. Yeah, they wrote a "How do you do, fellow kids" character instead of an actual human being. Yes. It's really honestly surprising that anybody thought that would be likable. But what are you going to do? Like, the fact that instantaneously all people had to do was watch a singular clip of Faye talking to anybody, or Frey, whatever, talking to anybody or the cuff or anything, and everybody lost their minds and agreed, oh my God, this is cringe. Play Forspoken. So Daily Duder, or Daily Streamer, Daily Duder, he is a friend of the channel. I've actually commissioned him to do a bunch of work for me as well, but he has made a couple of like very successful videos where he clipped together reactions from big streamers, and it was very, I mean, it's just baffling that he put me in the same category, which was wild. That I'm put in the same compilation as Asmongold. That's insane, but it was very generous of him, very nice. But he does this, and then he puts this together, and just watch how all of these streamers react to this dialogue for the first time. Okay, they've never seen this before, and everybody agrees with this reaction about what's about to happen. I think this actually might have gone viral in a couple TikToks, but this is their first time seeing the actual in-game cutscene.
Missile.
I know that guy. Okay.
Did I just do that?
Well,
Oh, and here's
definitely
that
with my
dialogue that
assistance.
went
I did
viral.
not just do that.
We did.
Let's just sit back and enjoy
I
it.
just moved shit with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
Oh, I saw this clip on Twitter.
I just
Oh,
moved
yucky.
shit with my mind.
Yucky.
That is something I do now. I do magic, talk to sentient cuffs, kill jacked up beasts. You know what? I'll probably fly next.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
Oh, that's too far. Good to know there's a line.
If you could just master these new abilities.
Did you not just see me
Can
take
everyone
out
go?
that gnarly beast?
Well, yeah, it's pretty bad. It's not helped by the fact that the lip syncing is also just a little off. Yeah, it's just it's just bad. So I said at the time with Forspoken, I was like, I think they would have been better off having a protagonist that just shuts up and just doesn't say stuff, isn't trying to be witty, isn't trying to be funny. If they just had a blank canvas, I think the game would have been received a lot better because it wouldn't have given everybody ammunition to attack the game for it. They could only focus on like a pretty bland world, but then also they could focus on decent combat, pretty good combat, big encounters and stuff. But because this is so front loaded with really cringy dialogue, that's all anybody could focus on. And it was just too easy to ignore, to not ignore. So now with Atlas Fallen, we've kind of gotten a AA smaller version of Forspoken that just has a player character that just doesn't say much of anything. It's just very bland and flat in his affect, and it works better in my opinion. So I think that actually does help a lot. I think so. Do people really want flat, boring characters more than they want really cringy, insufferable characters? Without a doubt, yes. I mean, in terms of overall entertainment value, Forspoken provided tons of entertainment value, no doubt, but not the kind that they wanted. Not the kind that makes the game successful. They basically had to shut down the studio and send all of the developers into other teams within the parent company because Forspoken sold and did so badly, primarily because the writing was so god-awful cringy. So just because like you might not have found it that cringy or you might have been able to tolerate it doesn't change the fact that the overwhelming majority of people that they needed to buy this game didn't want to tolerate it. And this is also something I was having a discussion with Joe Raptor about actually last week. Because he actually doesn't think Forspoken's that bad. He actually has really enjoyed his time with it. And next week, I'm sure we can talk to him about it on the podcast. But it's just whether an individual likes it or not, the point is that they screwed something up where the vast majority of gamers, they needed to buy their game, thought it was too cringy to tolerate. So, you know, individuals might be okay with it. But if the public is not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The perception is already there and it's not going to sell well. And they really have no one to blame but themselves. I mean, they did that. Yeah, I realize that it's a hated character. I just took it as Japanese game cringe. I'm defending Forspoken for months long. He just botched the marketing. I think marketing was an oopsie. I think the beta was a huge blunder. I thought it's pretty rare to have a beta that ends up taking people and making them less excited for a game. I went from thinking, oh, I'll try Forspoken, looks interesting. And then I played the beta and I was like, oh God. And they somehow managed to select the most boring segment of the game for the beta. It was really, frankly, baffling. But beyond the beta, I think that there is just simply a problem with how they wrote the character. It just was written poorly and portrayed maybe as good as she could have done with the script. I don't know. Because a lot of that dialogue, I'm not sure anybody could make that make that entertaining or funny. But who knows? Maybe, you know, you get Christopher Walken. Imagine Forspoken starring Christopher Walken, where he's like, wow, did I just do that? I killed the monster. I would actually, you know what? I'd play the shit out of that. I convinced myself. When are we getting that game? Forspoken with Christopher Walken. That's what I need. That'd be so good. Dude. Okay, new bucket list game. That's what I need. If I was a billionaire, that's what I would make happen. Anyway, all this to say, I think Atlas Fallen is worth you checking out. Especially being from a AA company or AA studio and coming from a publisher that publishes more indie and AA stuff. I think it's worth checking out if you're interested. Don't expect anything too crazy, but for what it's trying to do, I think it's pretty successful. All told. Oh, Jeff Goldblum in Forspoken, that would also be pretty good. That would actually be pretty funny. Dude, all of this, we could have saved them so much money. It's funny that we mentioned this. I've been brainstorming new series to do on the main channel, new series of videos. And one of the series I want to do is, I haven't figured out a way to really tie it together, but I wanted to do like how I would fix X game, how I would save X game, where I take a look at a game that I consider very broken or very problematic, and then I kind of put forward actual solutions of how I think that they could fix it. And with Forspoken, it would just be me. It's like a 30-second video. I'm like, just make the protagonist Christopher Walken or George Goldblum. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. That's it. Then we just walk away. Oh man, that would be so good. Nick Cage in Forspoken. Dude, I hope Nick Cage does more. I hope he does more game stuff after that Dead by Daylight or whatever thing he did. Apparently it's pretty funny. He has a lot of crazy dialogue. Anyway. Yeah, I need that format, bro. Love videos like that. Yeah, I want to try. I just have to figure out how we frame it. With all of this stuff, it's not just about the video ID. It's not just about the title. It's also about how do you make a thumbnail that communicates that. If I can't come up with a compelling thumbnail format and template, it just doesn't work as a series. But anyway, that's for me to worry about. So I'll figure it out and then I'll get the videos made. Don't worry. Don't you worry. But with all that said, thank you, everybody, for hanging with me. This is going to be syndicated again on all major podcasting platforms, so go check that out. Next week, we will have the one and only Joel Raptor back, so we will look back, or we'll look forward to that. And as always, I appreciate the heck out of you guys, all the super chats, the new members. All of you guys are just wonderful. I very much appreciate every single one of you. So much love. Stay safe out there, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.